Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wellness Wednesday. I'm Dr. Whitney, also known as Dr. Mom ND, and today this topic sort of fell into my lap as the comment, caption, whatever you want to call it, says, because I have been wanting to try several different dietary approaches for a while now, mainly because, as I also said in the caption, half or more of these diets or lifestyles or eating patterns, regimens, whatever you want to call them, didn't even exist when I was in naturopathic medical school. When I was in school, the big thing then was paleo. Okay. We were just really getting a foothold on the whole gluten-free thing. In fact, in one of my classes, I did a presentation on wheat belly. That's what it was. I was going to say grain brain for a minute, but I knew that book wasn't even out yet then. I believe it was like a research class, and we used to have to read different published articles to talk about things every week. And then one of the things was to pick a hot topic in a book and read about it and present it to the class. So I did wheat belly because the whole gluten-free thing was really getting a really strong following at that time. And in fact, the first day in nutritional biochemistry, we had a guest lecture. Oh my gosh, and I'm going to say it wrong now. Is it Dr. Brown? Oh my gosh, this is so bad. I should have looked that up. Anyways, he was like the gluten expert, and he went into this whole thing about how there's, gluten intolerance, gluten sensitivity, gluten allergies, and how you don't have to be celiac to be affected by gluten. And so gluten was really the big thing. And then along came paleo and CrossFit. And so the whole CrossFit crowd at school, that club, they were all into paleo. And the only thing I even remember hearing once about ketogenic eating was in a cardiovascular E&M class where, I don't know, it really wasn't relevant to the cardiovascular aspect, I don't think, of what we were talking about, unless somehow one student asked how maybe a ketogenic diet would affect whatever we were talking about. And the teacher, professor, whatever you want to call him, was a very crotchety old man who was just very set in his ways, probably hadn't changed his notes in, 10 years. And he grumbled around to the class and said, well, if you want to blow out your kidneys and have liver failure. So yeah, that was his take on it. That was the last thing I heard in school. And now everybody seems to be talking about ketogenic eating or going keto. And more recently, in the last few years, all the rage is Whole30 and now intermittent fasting. And so I have really wanted to take the time to go through all of these approaches, because ultimately what I usually end up doing is I have a patient that comes in and says, I've been following this way of eating. I thought it was working well for me. It worked really great for a friend or a family member, but it doesn't seem to be doing as much for me. And then we do the food intolerance evaluation, find out that there was probably things that are not compatible with their body, to customize whatever dietary approach they were trying to do. And the best example I have of that is a gal who went paleo and then later found out she was egg intolerant. So, strictly speaking, in the broadest sense, paleo wasn't the perfect approach for her. It had to be tweaked a little based on her food intolerance. So I think most people are pretty familiar with paleo at this point. And actually, I forgot one more book I'm going to show you because I know I've got it here. So I've tried a few things over the years. I was always really active. I never really had to follow any kind of diet plan, but sitting at school for, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, all day for classes, one of our professors shared this book with us. So the first time I ever really tried any kind of attempt at weight loss-ish, if you will, was because I put on another, 10 or 12 pounds just sitting in class for every day, all day for a couple of years. And I had got my wedding dress and I put it on and it was a little snug and I was quite surprised. So this book was kind of the first one that I did, The 4-Hour Body by Timothy Ferriss. It's honestly from, let's see, when was it published? It's from what I can tell, comparing it to the diets that are out there. So 2010. So it's already 10 years old. So if that tells you anything. And this was sort of a newer book even back when I was in school. So that is really similar to like a strict paleo. Basically what he does is cuts out all grains, all sugars, anything white, carby, and dairy. So you're basically down to meats, veggies. Also there's no fruit, nuts, hard-boiled eggs for breakfast, no alcohol except red wine. And basically you do that really strict, and he just recommends doing the same meals over and over again. So like every day I had hard-boiled eggs for breakfast, and every lunch I had a salad with, chicken or salmon on it. And every night for dinner I had, baked salmon or something. Basically, you eat really strict for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, you totally binge. I mean, the guy would eat like 8 bear claws for breakfast. And what his theory was, I think he called it the slow carb method, was to kind of keep your metabolism on its head. So it never really got used to any certain thing other than the fact that like you'd be really good for a few days and then you'd do this. And so, I don't know, this was a guy professor, and, his whole thing was, oh yeah, all you have to do is, follow this plan. You don't even have to exercise and you can lose weight. And I did actually, it worked. I mean, I did hot yoga once a week, but I mean, that wasn't anything super strenuous. So I lost weight, and I had a lot of people notice right away, like, oh my gosh, look at that. You look really great. So, it must have worked, because I don't remember having to do it or kind of stay on that regimen for very long. But that was just the tip of me getting into understanding these different dietary types. So I felt like I was pretty familiar with paleo, and now I just see so many women, especially, it seems like, doing really well with intermittent fasting, alone and or in combination with keto. So a while ago, even, I wanted to, like I said, my only experience in school was one professor really ripping on ketosis, saying that, if you did it long-term, you would blow your kidneys out. So, I knew there were a lot of people out there, especially the CrossFit people now are getting more into this. It's like an even leaner way of eating than paleo, I feel like, for them to achieve their physical goals that they want to do. So the first book I bought was this one. And to be completely honest, I haven't even read it yet. But this is what I was going to start with, The Ketogenic Diet. So I was going to start there. Then I found, and this one's relatively new. I believe this is from 2016. So, a few years old. But again, it's Amy Ramos. And this one had really good reviews on Amazon. I forget why I chose it, but there's lots of recipes in it. So again, haven't totally got to that one, but I intend to use it. I liked it because there was recipes. I've talked about the Weston Price Foundation and all the good fats, and where I get my recommendations for cod liver oil. And I was surprised that Sally Fallon, who kind of founded and runs that organization and bases all her work off of Dr. Weston Price's work, wrote this book. And again, to be honest, I have not had time to really sit down and read it. I'm sure it's fine. It is, again, a little dated. The printing was 2005. So if you're just looking for information about fats in general, this might be an interesting book to read. But the two I got to, which I'm trying to get through right now, what brought me to this is, again, so being a mom, I feel like I'm super active all the time. In fact, I just commented the other day on Facebook to someone that I never sit. In all honesty, I'm about 5 to 8 pounds off of where I was before my second son. And I feel like without having really committed to any kind of exercise or diet plan, that I just attributed that to all of the activity I was doing. So I was like, oh yeah, no problem. But I'm 5 to 8 pounds off of where I was with him. And then I'm another 10 pounds off of where I was with my first son, because I didn't lose the weight breastfeeding. I nursed all the time for a year. And I didn't lose a pound, okay? So women who just have to breastfeed and all the baby weight melts off, congratulations. I'm really happy for you that that works, but I was super bummed. I thought, oh yeah, this is fine. Like I ate healthy. I was semi-active during my first pregnancy. I'm just going to have this baby and continue to eat healthy, and I'm going to nurse them. And oh my God, all this weight will just come off. I don't know. I don't know if that's your genetics, or maybe it's just because you're in your 20s. So maybe my mid to late 30s was, that card was not in my favor anymore. So 10 pounds from that. And then another 10 pounds from fertility treatment. So I didn't have to do full-blown IVF, but we found out through a little bit of blood work, again, one hormonal level, which we never talked about in school, and I never learned about until I went to see a fertility specialist, was AMH. And this is anti-Mullerian hormone. The amount of it is indicative of basically your egg population. So if you didn't already know, all of the eggs that you have to make potential babies are in you at the time you're born. So they actually don't come from your mom. They come from your grandma. Because if you think about it, you were already an egg in your mom when your grandma got pregnant with your mom. So you and your eggs come from your grandma, which is where we get epigenetics from, skipping every other generation. But that's neither here nor there. So regardless of if it had something to do with my genetics, my grandma, or just my age. My AMH was so low, I had such a low egg count that I basically had a 1% chance of naturally getting pregnant every month. Not that I wasn't healthy. All my other hormones were fine. I had been doing acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, Reiki, craniosacral therapy, everything that I knew how to do naturally from naturopathic medicine. Was fantastic, but it wasn't helping me get pregnant. So all I needed essentially was a little bit of extra hormone to activate more of my eggs in one cycle. And then we did an IUI, and voila, that worked for me. However, as soon as you add in those hormones to your body goes, what is going on? And it starts freaking out. And because I was taking extra hormones and extra progesterone, my body was like insulating for baby, and bam, 10 pounds went on before I even got pregnant. So for me personally, my mommy journey, that's it. I am trying to find some kind of lifestyle that's not just weight loss, but that is going to work for me long term, because I also know as a woman, as you get older and your hormones change, it becomes harder and harder to maintain weight. It's actually, it just becomes really easy. Everything slows down, and, you might be eating the same, but in the same activity level, but the pounds just keep going up. So I'm 38, and I've been seeing women mid 40s to mid 50s personally in my practice, and friends and family too, doing really well with intermittent fasting. So this is the book I got, Intermittent Fasting. Actually, it's really cute. If you get it, the fork, knife, and plate say 101, Intermittent Fasting 101 and Keto. And specifically, it says the ultimate guide to IF, intermittent fasting for women who want to lose weight, burn fat, and increase mental clarity, plus a guide to the ketogenic diet for beginners. So this book is 2 parts, and I'm a good way through. Let me see, where's the first? This is the end of the first section. So this is the first section, and I'm here. So I'm about halfway through. So I've already learned a little bit about intermittent fasting, the different types, how you do it. And then on the Today Show, I saw this, and this lady was kind of cool. I just liked her. I get a good vibe from her. I mean, it's a pretty thin book, but this is called Dirty Lazy Keto. So another 100 affordable recipes, all less than 10 net carbs. So she's cool because she doesn't take it too seriously. She says that you can tweak things, you can be lazy about it. It doesn't have to be all about, testing your blood every day for ketones, which is something I'm going to get into. Oh, Ethel, go check out Dr. Berg on YouTube for keto. Okay, I will. Thank you. Thank you for the tip. I am always looking for more information. So basically my approach is I want to try intermittent fasting with a slightly keto-ish dietary approach. So I'm not going to get super crazy strict about it, because I've heard, at least I've seen friends who are really big colleagues in CrossFit doing keto, and I mean they're doing calculations. In fact, I think there's a page in here I saw, and I was like, oh God, this is the part that scares me. This is why I've kind of hedged away from keto per se, and sort of just stuck with, so like this kind of stuff right here, see all those calculations? That's just like, okay, before you begin keto, you need to calculate the following: your basal metabolic rate, your total energy expenditure, know your body fat percentages and lean mass, adjust your calorie intake for weight loss or weight gain, calculate your carb intake, your protein intake, your fat intake, and it sounds like a lot of math, and you weren't expecting this. Okay. But it says it can basically be done pretty simply, and once you do it, it's done once. And okay, so this gal, right, Elizabeth Moore, she does make it pretty straightforward. I've only skimmed through the keto section, but today I wanted to talk about the intermittent fasting part. So basically, there are a few different approaches to what we call fasting. So for me personally, when I hear the word fasting, I think of not eating at all. I think of crazy skinny Buddha men, like, sitting in meditation, like silence and not eating or talking for like 7 days. That's what I think of. Apparently, a fast is just any period of time where you don't eat necessarily, and you can tweak that by if you are also consuming liquids or not. So there are, different levels of fasting. But for the purposes of this, and really from what I've read, the only reason this is, they say for women, is because there's a couple sections in here where she talks about the fact that because of women's hormones, you have to be more careful as you introduce this. So it just talks about, there's sections in here specifically for women about, if you notice any of these things, and then she lists them: irregular menstrual cycle, hair loss, mood swings, noticeable digestive irregularities, feeling abnormal and consistent cold, or extreme intolerance to stress. Well, let's be honest. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 of those most people have, most moms anyways, have on a regular basis anyways. But essentially it talks about the fact that it can affect your hormones because you're forcing your body to use fat differently, which fat is the basis of your hormones. It's how your body makes hormones and how it utilizes them. So it could have a potential effect on your fertility. So if you are someone who's trying to get pregnant or been struggling with fertility, again, not necessarily stay away from this, but just be careful with it and be very aware of your body and what your body's normal was before starting this, so that you can be aware of, what you observe as you take on a fast. So that's the section. Like it says, intermittent fasting, men versus women. And there's literally 3 pages on it. Okay. So there's a chapter in here about the science. If you're really into that, honestly, I skimmed through it because I'm like, I get it. Fasting's good. It works, blah, blah, blah. Just tell me different ways to do it. So different techniques. All right. So I'll tell you up front. The one I am doing is the 16-8 method. So legit, I started this yesterday, which is why it was kind of funny, because I was sitting around last night thinking, what am I going to talk about tomorrow? What am I going to talk about? What do people want to hear about? Well, this is kind of a good continuation of all the new year, new you stuff and weight loss, but a little different, a little more focused. So 16-8 method basically means you eat for 8 hours and you have a 16-hour fasting time, which I felt for me was very realistic because the biggest chunk of 16 hours is when you're sleeping. So no problem. What I'm doing is I'm starting my fast later in the morning because I've actually never been a breakfast person. It was always a struggle for me to eat first thing in the morning. And I did. Full disclosure, I've always recommended my patients start their mornings with protein. Everybody talks about breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It depends on what your eating style is. Maybe you're fasting, or maybe your eating is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Maybe you're someone who eats an early dinner and then you didn't eat again at night. And so maybe you are naturally fasting already in this method without really knowing it. So I kind of get it. If you are going to eat breakfast, if that is important for you, that you feel enough hunger first thing in the morning and getting up, then you should eat, but you should eat protein or fat. Okay. And I've always talked about that. We stay away from carbs and simple sugars and all that junk because we want to jumpstart our liver in the morning, get it working, get the metabolism going. If you don't eat, but you still feel like that is important for you, a glass of hot water with lemon will do the same thing. Okay. It just kind of sets the stage for the day for digestion and turning everything on. So for me though, I can go a few hours in the morning without eating, especially if I have a cup of coffee, which you can have, unsweetened, no sugar added, coffee or tea in the morning. So my 8 hours is 10 to 6. And honestly, it wasn't exactly a struggle last night. It was just habit. And that's exactly what I realized is I was just putting things in my mouth out of sheer habit because I was making something for my kids. Oh, I had the crust of the bread cut off. I usually throw that in my mouth. This morning, I was cutting up some string cheese for my younger one, and I only ever give him half a stick at a time because if you give him the whole thing, he throws half of it on the floor. I'm used to just like eating the leftovers and I don't even think about it. And I've actually told people that I don't eat meals anymore, or at least I haven't for a good 6 months. I'm always eating the leftovers of my kids' food as they snack and eat throughout the day. So just keeping my hand away from my mouth was like 90% of the battle last night. I wasn't really hungry after 6 o'clock, and I really didn't wake up starving this morning. I just had to remind myself, you don't need to put that in your mouth. And just went back to drinking my cup of coffee with a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg in it. That makes it taste good. So that's the 16-8 method. 16 hours fasting, 8 hours eating. Now, obviously you can complement that with any other style of eating. So if you want to do Whole30 or paleo or keto or whatever, we'll talk about that next week because there is a good section in here. I like it's one of the first books I've seen that does just a nice little concise overview of each sort of dietary approach that can complement intermittent fasting. So 16-8 method is one. The other one is the 5-2. And the first thing she says is that this method does look more like a diet than a proper fast, but it is a popular method for weight loss. This one involves normal eating for 5 days and then restricting your caloric intake to 600 calories or less for 2 days of the week. And the cool thing is they can be any 2 days you want at all. It doesn't matter. They can be next to each other, apart. You might do Wednesday and Friday, and then the next week, maybe you do Tuesday and Thursday or Saturday and Sunday, whatever works for you. So for some people that might be really appealing because it does give you a lot more flexibility than having to think about eating, by the clock. It gives you a whole day, 2 days a week, any days you want, just to adjust your calories that day. The third method is the eat, stop, eat method. This involves a strict 24-hour fast 1 to 2 times a week. No solid food or caloric intake. Unsweetened coffee and tea are acceptable. A great example would be to fast from dinner to dinner. So 4 p.m. to 4 p.m. It does not matter what time frame you choose, but it needs to be a 24-hour period. So that again rings more true to me of what I think of as fasting. There were a couple kids while I was in school who did the water fast where they just carried around, and you knew who was doing it because they were carrying around literally a gallon jug of milk, like that kind of gallon, but just full of water. And that's all they would consume for as long as they could. And so some kids made it like 2 days. Other kids would say, oh my God, I'm on day 4. It's day 3 getting over the hump, and other people would do it for a week. And I've heard of people doing these things frequently enough that your body sort of gets trained and it's not as hard as you think. So they've said. I've never been brave enough to do it. The fourth method of fasting is called alternating day method. This involves fasting every other day. It can be customized to your liking. You cut back to 600 calories on those days. So not unlike the 5-2 method, but in this one, you literally do it every other day. So maybe for some people that works. The other, number 5, is the warrior method. This includes eating, small amounts of raw plant-based foods during the day and then 1 large meal during the evening. So essentially you're fasting all day and breaking the fast at night. This approach typically focuses on eating mainly raw and unprocessed foods to get the full benefit. So again, if you're not like a raw person, this one might not be so great for you. So light amounts of raw foods or complete fasting during the day and then 1 large meal at night as unprocessed and raw as possible. The 6th option is called the spontaneity method, and this is the loosest and most flexible of intermittent fasting methods. Pretty straightforward, no guidelines. You simply skip a meal when it's convenient for you or if you're not hungry. Skipping 1 or 2 meals every so often can be a great foundation to lay while you search for a more suitable routine. So again, they say this one comes in handy for, busy parents, people who are on the go, or people who just love to wing it. There's literally no structure. You just skip a meal here and there. So again, I think, some people have become so accustomed to eating by a clock instead of eating by when they're hungry, that's just our society. We get up, we have breakfast at 8, we have lunch at noon, we have dinner at whatever, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. And that's what we do. So they do actually talk about at the beginning of this book too, some of the common myths. And I was surprised, and it does make sense if you get into the science with fasting and how it changes your body's physiology and affects your organs so that, things are just having a break basically. To catch up on their backlog of work, like your liver, to clean out any, bugs or inflammation or anything like that, and just give you a clear head. So eating throughout the day, I know was popular for a while. Was it like people would say like eat 6 or 7 small meals a day, but the whole time you're always putting stuff in, you're always asking your body to do work to deal with that food. So that I can understand after now reading more about this, why that's actually not an ideal approach either, especially I should say, namely, if you're trying to either achieve weight loss or functionally change something about your health, like there's some, issue that you're trying to get at the root at, skin, hormones, joint pain, digestive issues. Healing happens the most when your body has a break to put all its energy towards healing, which makes sense. I mean, that's why it's so important to get truly restful, restorative sleep at night. That's when a lot of your healing happens. So that is all the methods of fasting. As I said, I just got through the different methods. I had already sort of been exposed to the whole 16-8, and so I kind of knew that was what I was going to do. So I jumped right in that yesterday, but I'm still getting through. There's a section in here, the best foods for fasting. And then actually what's nice about this book too, I didn't say, chapter 7 is called Getting Started. There's a little bit of prep. And then chapter 8 is actually 1 week of step-by-step diets, day by day, for each approach. So no matter what I say, there's 6 total, 6 different methods. 6 different methods. Chapter 8 gives you 1 week of starting each one. So you can kind of see, if it works for you. It doesn't exactly tell you what foods to eat, but it does, just give you the, kind of like what to expect in a guide to guide you through, like morning. Okay, here's day 5 of the 16-8 method. Okay, so it says morning. Another beautiful morning, be mindful and aware, stay hydrated, continue your day until 10 a.m. till you get to enjoy some food. Midday, time for a snack or meal, take some notes, stay hydrated, evening approaches, blah, blah, blah. Use your allotted time for drinking and eating, and don't eat past 6 o'clock. And it just gives you kind of a guide of what to do and how to have the right mindset and what to expect. So that is kind of nice. And then, like I said, the second half of the book is all keto. And I'll get to that later. But then, like I said, I've got recipe books up the wazoo here, and I'm still following some of my 21-day sugar detox recipes too, because those are handy. They're all paleo and keto appropriate for the most part. I think they're paleo for sure. It depends on the grains, I guess, and how strict you're dealing with paleo. And now that I say keto, I think they are, but I'm not sure. The other cookbook that I actually did like, if you are getting into exploring different sort of approaches, is the Primal Kitchen cookbook. And I don't have it to show you, I'm sorry, because I have it at home. But every recipe in there is noted if it is Whole30 compliant, paleo compliant, keto compliant, if it's just sugar-free, it's noted. So you can, depending on, what kind of plan you want to try to follow, you can experiment with different recipes all in one cookbook. So you don't have to buy a keto cookbook and a paleo cookbook. That one's kind of nice. It's all in one. But a lot of these books, these little thin books, they're not that expensive either. And honestly, I've had patients say they've had really good luck going to their libraries too and finding these books and reading them, and either, trying recipes while they've got the book, or, photocopying them. I didn't say that. Or buying them from Amazon, checking them out for a week or two. And if it's not a good fit, sending it back. I mean, Amazon's got pretty open return window, as long as you don't damage stuff. Yeah, so that's everything for today. That's what I'm trying to do. I've also added going back to hot yoga 1 to 2 times a week because it works for me. I ran a lot through high school and junior high, and let me just say it didn't do a lot for my thighs and butt. Okay, just made them bigger. So I don't want to put on muscle. I want to stay more lean. And despite the fact that I'm sick of running and it was hard on my knees because my knees are worn out from doing it before, I have found in the past that hot yoga worked really well for me. For some people, that's, Pilates or, whatever, some other kind of more gentle exercise. But I'm doing that, and I'm still trying to get back to my birth fit. So if you are a mom at all and you've still got the mommy pooch going on, my mom and I, actually my mom saw it and told me about it, and I actually heard about it the same day on, not PBS, what's the public radio. It was an article or a story there, and it was a feature on the Today Show, I think. And it wasn't the birth fit program per se, but it was a program where the women were, some of them were 15 years postpartum, and they still had the mommy pooch going on. And what that is your ab muscles. It's not just fat. Don't feel bad. It's not fat. It's your ab muscles become separated, and some of your guts, for lack of a better word, can protrude out. So that's why when you eat or drink, it just seems to kind of fluctuate. I notice mine does. If I eat an entire bowl of popcorn, shoot, I look like I'm 8 months pregnant again. It's horrible. Like, I put on a tighter shirt and I was like, I gotta take that off. So Birth Fit has a postpartum plan that's 15 weeks. There's videos. I think you do them 2 or 3 times a week. And a lot of it, it's not planks. You actually shouldn't do planks. That's the first thing I read about true diastasis recti, when your ab muscles separate and repairing from having babies, is you don't want to do that. That is the wrong kind of exercise. So what Birth Fit is, what I've gotten into so far, I haven't actually done the exercises, is a lot of breathing and very gentle, I'm going to say core work, but they shouldn't say core work. It's not just core work. It's not just Kegels and pelvic floor and core work and planks. It's very specific exercises that they have figured out. So I'm trying to lose that last bit of, baby weight, not because, I want to be thin again. I was never sick then. I've always been curvy, and I just want to feel good again in my body, right? I mean, I have literally totes of clothes that don't fit me, and I'm refusing to get rid of them because I'm determined to, I know some of it won't, your body changes, and some of it I probably won't ever get back into, but I don't want to go out and buy a whole new wardrobe yet because I haven't totally given up hope that I can get back to some semblance of where I was. So between yoga a couple times a week, I'm going to try to do this birth fit thing to repair those muscles and just kind of hold everything back in again. That's what that's about. And I think it's $100 or $200, but you have it for forever, and it's a video course, and there's lots of videos of examples where they give you how to do all the exercises. So for moms out there, don't lose hope. You can come back from this 5, 10, 20 years later and find a new way of eating, find some specific exercises that work for you, and you can get it back. That's my goal anyways. So that's everything for this week. Next week, like I said, I'll try to get through more of the actual keto stuff. And thank you, Ethel, for the suggestion. I will also look up Dr. Berg on YouTube and just give you a better synopsis of what I'm finding in these different books and a better idea of how maybe it's going to go for me to try to implement keto over the next week for myself. So thank you for joining me. And again, this is Dr. Whitney, Dr. Mom ND with Holistic Home Health and Wellness Wednesday, number 35 this week already. Woo! All right. I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for joining me.